Hey guys, thanks for stopping by my channel. Today's video we're going to be doing some coloring with the brand new Meeden 120 colored oil-based pencils. I do have an unboxing video as well as a swatching video. I will pin them down below if you'd like to check those out. I have gotten some requests to see these colored pencils in action, so we're going to do a little bit of coloring. I actually spent about 2 hours coloring this half of the portrait, and I thought I would just speed it up to the more interesting part since I was working on the flush and the blush. It's no secret I love blush, and I definitely have blush blindness. Definitely comes across when coloring a lot of my portraits. So I thought we would talk a little bit about different times in history and the trend cycle of blush. Cosmetics themselves go back thousands of years, and ancient civilizations were already using pigments to add color to the face. Ancient Egyptians are probably some of the most famous early cosmetic users. We tend to immediately think of that dramatic black eye makeup, but cosmetics weren't limited to eyes. Different mineral and plant-based pigments could be used to add color to the cheeks and lips as well. Some of the ingredients used throughout history sound perfectly reasonable, others not so much. There were periods when cosmetic pigments contained substances we now know were dangerous, including things like lead compounds and mercury. And what's interesting is that rouge wasn't always intended to look completely natural. Today we're constantly being sold makeup that's supposed to look like we're not wearing makeup at all. Your skin but better, your lips but better, a natural flush. But depending on the time period, people weren't necessarily trying to fool anyone. Sometimes the fact that you were wearing rouge was kind of the point. And this will become very obvious when we get into the European makeup trends of the 1600s and especially the 1700s, because if you think modern blush blindness is bad, we need to have a conversation with the 18th century. In fashionable European society, particularly among the upper classes, very pale powdered complexions became very fashionable. And what looks fantastic against a very pale face? Apparently, a lot of rouge. But then, beauty standards do what beauty standards always do. They change. By the 19th century, particularly during the Victorian era, attitudes towards obvious cosmetics became much more complicated. For a respectable woman, looking very obviously painted can carry negative associations. But here's the problem. People still like the appearance of rosy cheeks and lips. So now you have this beauty standard where you're supposed to look naturally youthful, healthy, and flush, but you're not necessarily supposed to look like you did anything to achieve it. Does that sound familiar? Because apparently the no makeup look is not quite as modern as we like to think. While it was somewhat acceptable for women to use subtle cosmetics, there were also all sorts of ways people tried to bring natural color into their faces. Pinching the cheeks is probably the one most of us have heard about, and biting or rubbing the lips could temporarily make them look redder. Now, this beauty standard hasn't necessarily disappeared. The acceptable method of achieving it has changed. You still wanted the healthy flush, you just weren't supposed to get caught creating it. Eventually, cosmetics became increasingly commercialized and normalized, especially moving into the 20th century. And rouge gradually became something ordinary women could purchase as part of an increasingly recognizable modern makeup routine. You started getting cosmetics sold in compacts and pots and eventually all sorts of different formulas. And somewhere along the way, most of us stopped calling it rouge and started calling it blush. Getting into the 20th century, blush starts going on a bit of a road trip around the face, because not only does the amount of blush change, where we're told to put it changes too. Sometimes it's concentrated on the apples of the cheeks, sometimes it's swept upward, sometimes it's used almost like contour, sometimes it's extremely subtle. And then the 1980s happened. Blush could be bold, sculpted, and swept dramatically up towards the temples. There are some incredible makeup looks from that period where the blush is absolutely not sitting quietly in the background. If you were wearing that makeup every day in the 1980s, it probably didn't look particularly shocking to you because everyone around you was seeing similar makeup. Your eyes adjust to whatever is normal at the time. Then trends shift again. The 1990s brings different makeup aesthetics, including all those browns and neutral tones. And eventually we reached the 2010s where contouring became absolutely enormous. Suddenly we're carving out cheekbones and sculpting faces, and all the makeup influencers on YouTube have 17 different powders and a beauty blender. And blush is still there, but for a while it feels like bronzer, contour, and highlighter are getting a lot of the attention. Then we move into the 2020s. Now this is when blush came roaring back. Cream blush, liquid blush, blush sticks, blush bombs, blush across the nose, blush high on the cheekbones, blush under the eyes, blush draping, sunset blush, sunburn blush, boyfriend blush. The ultimate blush blindness has now become front and center. And I think that's actually the most interesting part of this whole thing, how the pendulum swings back and forth with so many different things. With blush in particular, what we're talking about today, in the 80s, it was so almost clown-like, I want to say, and then it became so outlandish and so intense that the pendulum swung back the other way in the 90s with more neutral, kind of like cool brown tones. And then finally, again, the 2020s hit, and then we were back with the more intense blush blindness type of blush that we see. It's kind of starting to ebb out a little bit, I think, now that we're into the mid to the late 2020s. So it'll be interesting to see what's coming next. I believe it'll probably be more in line with the 90s trend of neutrals, browns, cool tones. It looks normal at the time because everybody around you is doing something. It starts to be, status quo. And once the trend changes, suddenly we can all see it again. Hindsight is 2020. I know some of you are probably saying, Crystal, what does makeup and blush have to do with coloring? Well, I'm going to tie it all together here with this next point. I honestly think coloring trends work exactly the same way. I know I've had techniques or certain ways of coloring that I loved at one point, and then later I look back at an older coloring page and I realize how much my eye has changed. I think another more universal example would be what coloring trends are happening right now. It's a lot of alcohol markers, cute and cozy coloring, whereas if you go back maybe 5 years or less, and it was a totally different landscape. It was a little bit more detailed, a little bit more grown up, I want to say. And I'm really interested in seeing what the next coloring trend will bring us. I do feel like the cute and cozy trend bubble might be on the verge of bursting, and the pendulum might be swinging the other way around for us in that respect. So I really would love to hear what you guys think about the pendulum swinging back and forth when it comes to not only makeup, clothing, or politics. Well, we'll keep out of politics. Don't tell me anything about politics. Let's keep it coloring trends and makeup. So I really do think we could apply the same principles to many different things in life, even our coloring trends. Like maybe a few years I'll look back at this page and think, had a case of major blush blindness. But because you're staring at the same face for hours, your eyes absolutely adjust to it. That's why it's always good to take breaks and come back, think about it for a little while before you commit to anything too permanent. Eventually, I do have to force myself to stop adding too many flush or blush layers at some point. But I do really like the rosy cheeks on these two, especially because they're supposed to be twins. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the true color that I'm laying down here is not really coming across. It is coming across kind of washed out. But in real life, they do look a little bit more peachier. I might have to tinker with my camera a little bit to try and see if I can get it to film more true to life. I do really love adding blush tones when I'm coloring skin. That is one of my favorite things. I've definitely mentioned that before. I'm not necessarily trying to make it look like they're wearing blush per se, but I'm using those pinks and peaches and reds as part of the complexion itself. Real skin isn't one beige or brown color. There's warmth, coolness, redness, shadows, highlights. All of these tiny shifts happen across a face. You have the natural blood flow underneath. And I think adding some of that variation is what starts making a face feel a little more alive and gives each one a personality all their own. And 20 years from now, we'll probably be doing something completely different and wondering what we were thinking way back in 2026. Although I have a feeling rosy cheeks aren't really going anywhere permanently. They never really have. The amount changes, the placement changes, the products change. But, apparently humans looked at naturally flushed cheeks thousands of years ago and collectively decided, yes, let's exaggerate that, and we've been doing it ever since. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed my little TED Talk on blush and blush blindness. I have about 10 minutes left of this video, and apparently my blush script didn't extend as long as I thought. So let's just kind of hang out afterwards and do some observations on what I'm doing here. I actually started running into, I have a little accident coming up real soon, and I almost thought it was over for the whole page after I spent so much time working on it. I had an issue down below. We'll see it pretty soon. You might even see it already. That little dark spot around her jawline. I started getting a little bit of a buildup of waxes, and I was using my blender pencil. I got this Pressler blender pencil from Amazon, and I really like it a lot. I was using two different blender pencils on this page, and it's very similar to a color blender, whereas I kind of use it almost as an eraser, because it kind of helps me out. If I put too much color in one spot, it kind of erases it essentially from the page, or if I have too much of a wax buildup, it helps a lot. This is the Grisaille blender. I was initially using that just because it's not as aggressive. It's more easily blends. Actually, it's an actual blender. It actually blends and burnishes. I wasn't trying to burnish too hard here, but I decided to take my chances in my hands and pick up the Pressler blender. Probably doing it soon, yeah, because I was getting little wax buildups, and I was trying to get rid of those to get a more smoother finish, and it was working for the most part. But unfortunately, I played too much with fate, and you'll see I pretty much started ripping a hole in the paper. I've done this many times before. I haven't learned my lesson apparently, where something starts getting a little funky with the paper, wearing through because I'm doing too many layers, and keep messing with it. I'm trying to go in with the Grisaille blender a little bit here and fix it, but I think I ultimately kind of fixed it in the end. You can't really see it so bad here because it's far away, but I'll show you when we're actually done with the page what it looks like. There I am messing with it again, trying to remove the little wax bits, and instead I ripped the paper. And I'm going in here, I think a Van Dyke brown. I'm trying to fix it a little more, making it worse. I just cut to, I was trying to scratch it with my fingernail, get it like smoothed out. And now she looks like she has a beard. I'm trying to erase it. This is when I actually probably really paper started peeling off. So yeah, never learned my lesson on this one. I did try to smooth it out and recolor it with the ivory white and the light pink, I think, here. I was considering cutting this whole part out, but I thought it was important to leave it in so you can see, you know, everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. Try to fix it the best you can to save the page. It is a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes, especially if you're coloring in an expensive book. You're a little bit afraid sometimes to work in them. I often feel that way too. Sometimes I will make a copy of the page, and in order not to ruin the book. I'm getting out of that a little bit more. I've definitely been trying not to be so precious with a lot of my books, and I have made mistakes. There are some lots of abandoned pages. I usually get into kind of pickle sometimes where there's things I don't know how to color yet, or I don't feel confident in coloring, and then I'll abandon it for a later date. Sometimes I do go back. There has been instances where I've gone back even years later. And I have been coloring since maybe 2020. So I've been coloring for a while now. And there are things where I didn't know how to do them maybe a few years ago. I'll go back and finish it up or color over it somehow. I do really love how nicely these pencils layer. This paper, as I've mentioned, the paper in this book is a little bit difficult. There are lots of pencils that don't really work at all on this paper, but I am really happy that I can use these pencils on these books, because these are my favorite books, even though I do complain about the paper. And I do really like the artist Anastasia Koldareva. She is one of my favorites to color. I was originally thinking about doing these opposites almost. I would do it like a yin and yang sort of thing, but ultimately I decided let me try my best to color them as similarly as I possibly can. Usually I can't duplicate something again, like one time. It's like kind of like a one-time only deal most of the time with me. But what I did was, when I was coloring the face on the right, every layer I was taking note and writing it down. That's something that I don't usually do. So I have a whole list of what colors I used and the order. I stuck to it somewhat, and I didn't really stick to it completely, but I think they came out pretty similar. I'm going in right now with a pale yellow, just to kind of connect the seams, like so it doesn't look like such a harsh jump from like the blush to the highlight area, and to kind of give it a luminosity, kind of like a glow from underneath look, right before I go in with this Marco Tribute soft white pencil. I feel like this is really where the magic happens, and this soft white pencil is very similar to a Holbein soft white pencil. It kind of marries everything together, blends everything together, makes everything look complete, connects the puzzle pieces together. I'd like to think of it as, I got a few of these pencils as extras in a tin of Marco Renoir pencils. Unfortunately, I don't think they sell them separately. I really wish I could buy a whole bunch, because I really love them. Here I'm just adding some cinnamon to her lips, because I remembered, I think I used cinnamon on the other girl's lips. I did also add some of the cinnamon to some of the shadow areas in her neck right here, and the temples just to give a little bit more warmth to the shadows. Even though I know that probably sounds a little bit counterintuitive, you mostly want to make your shadows be dark and cool, but I do like some spots to exude like warmth because everything's not totally uniform, like darkness. Since the face is sphere, like rounded, there are going to be some shadows that are a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, so I do like to have the variation there too, so it doesn't look so unrealistic, I guess. I am working on a skin tone recipe guidebook, and that's kind of why I am also filming this video for myself as well, to see what it is, the steps I actually do, so I could communicate that into like a directive, because mostly I kind of just am winging it for the most part. I'm not really following any sort of rules, and a lot of times everything I do is different from the last time. That's why I made a point in writing everything down I did on the girl on the right. So hopefully that will help me out in getting this book together. Right now I'm doing her eyes with a marker. I like to do an alcohol marker as a base for the eyes just because I think it looks really pretty, and then use the blender marker to kind of spread everything out and lighten it up a little bit, and then I take a pencil and color in like the shadow parts, or try and make the eye look a little bit more realistic with the different lines. I think eyes are almost like fingerprints. There's no two are necessarily alike. They have different patterns going on in them. So I do think doing the first layer with a marker kind of helps give them more of a glass-like look to them. Then finally I'm just going in a little bit more with this light gray blue. I think I used different colored pencils for the other girl's eyes. I couldn't remember. I didn't write that part down, but I think they look pretty similar. Then just a quick 2 dots with an acrylic paint pen.